How's it going, everybody? It's Daniel Calderon here on the podcast, Corner Talks. I have my friend Emeka. How are you, buddy?
Good man, how you doing?
Good, man. It's been a long time. I just realized we've known each other around a year now. Around this time of year, this is when we first connected. You remember that?
Yeah, this is
We met,
yeah. I remember we connected
we met up in the
online.
city,
It's
and
pretty funny.
yeah, you reached out, and we
Yeah.
were just kind of like bouncing ideas off each other and kind of figuring out where our paths are in the whole career of filmmaking, and where we want to where we see ourselves in the near future. But we did not expect a pandemic, that's for sure, because when we were talking, there was no sight of it. The coronavirus was
No,
just just another piece of news. But yeah, so we've been friends for a year. We've been collaborating on a project that we plan to continue this year. And I guess my first question for you would be like, what made you get into filmmaking? What made you get into this sort of career, the film industry?
oh, that's like a really big question, but an important question, right? Because I think everyone has their origin story.
Of course.
You want to say? I think for me, it's just like I'm sure as a kid you grew up watching a lot of movies.
Hmm.
So I remember watching we watched all types of movies at my house.
Hmm.
From movies from the golden age all the way up to like horror films. And for me, I just like being exposed to it as a kid and growing up, and then when I got to high school, taking film classes and studying film and learning the art of it
Right.
really drew me closer to really wanting to get into that field. So it's always
Nice.
been how my interest started for the most part. Yeah.
Sure. Is there like a certain like actor or kind of filmmaker that inspired you or made you take that leap, or was it kind of just the art form itself? Would you say?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I've definitely a number of artists who definitely inspired me, like people like Denzel and Sidney Poitier and
Hmm.
Harrison Ford. Just Spielberg. I love Spielberg movies just
Love
because
Spielberg
it's
movies. Yeah,
something
they're
so
whimsical,
magical.
right?
Something so magical about it. Hmm?
Hmm. I was gonna say whimsical. That's the term that the people,
Yeah,
some
whimsical.
YouTubers use, right? When they're reviewing his films, they always say very whimsical and,
Oh man,
like you said, endearing, and it's always coming of age too. There's always that element. You just connect them. They're very nostalgic. You think of Jurassic Park and Jaws, like those kinds of movies, because
mhm.
they bring you back when either your parents showed you or just you watched them yourself growing up. For me, movies have always I kind of always been interested in movies because of my parents. They just sat me down, had no choice. I was like just a newborn, and they explained to me they would have this thing where every Saturday night they would just watch movies, and then when I was born, they just said, we'll keep them beside us, and they said I just gravitated to the screen and I just enjoyed um, what a movie was all about, and being lost in those, like, I shouldn't say lost, but being immersed in those 2 hours, that escapism. That's something that drew
Mhm.
me. And then, my hero or my, idol that I look at is Tarantino. So it's been a combination of that. And he pulled me more towards the writer director aspect, because I never really understood what the roles are in film. I just knew I loved movies. I never knew what you could do with them. And
Right.
so for me, that's why I pulled towards the whole writer director side. You classify yourself as all different hats. Like you do the writing, the directing, producing, acting. But would you say you're primarily an actor, or is that something you're more passionate about?
Yeah, I mean, I think being more passionate about and actually doing, I think, are two different things. I
Hmm.
think a lot of actors today, unfortunately, are forced to wear multiple hats. You know, just because of the way the industry is, right? We have, like how you said, with with social media and with we got like TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, all these mediums that we can now express ourselves. And so what that means is that, like, if people can gain followers pretty easily now and a
Right.
following, a fan base, you are now at the mercy of, like, kind of starting your own thing, and getting noticed that way.
Hmm.
Long gone are the days where you can just kind of just go and just be an actor. Like, no, you have to like now forge your own path.
Hmm.
And part of forging your own path is being a creator, and creating is the writing, the directing, the acting, the producing, all of that,
Hmm.
as you know. So it's
Yeah, I was going to agree
definitely
with
a
you on that.
balance.
Sorry, go ahead. What were you saying?
Oh, it's definitely a balance, definitely a balance.
Yeah, but I'm glad you brought that up, man, because that's very important, especially if people listening have any interest in film or that sort of career. Is, I was talking about with my family the other day, is when I was growing up, not that it was special or anything, but when I said I wanted to be a filmmaker, like I was a kid, like no one, I was like unique, like no one had any intention of being anything creative. Like maybe the area I grew up, but there was just no, and also I didn't have Instagram, right? Instagram came later in my life when I was a teenager. So when I was going around saying, oh, I love to be a director, or I would make little films, or just, be part of, write stories, I always felt like unique in that way. And not that, we're all unique in our own way, not that there's anything that's been taken away.
Of
But you
course.
look at Instagram, you look at social media, and like you said, you realize, like, to get to that level, or to get to that path, to pursue a career in that, it takes a lot of hustle, a lot of ambition, and there's a lot of different hats you have to wear, like you were saying. My point, I guess, what I'm trying to say is, if you could pick one role, if tomorrow they said this is the role that you stick with the rest of your life for filmmaking, what would it be? Would it be the writer, the director, the actor?
Hmm. Man, you know what? I would honestly just say I'm a storyteller. If I had to be very honest with you, I
That's
know, and
good, man.
I know it's not necessarily like within the confines of what you gave me, but
Hmm.
definitely, I think that would be the storyteller. I think that's pretty much what I'd say for the
I
most
like
part.
that, because I probably can, I resonate with that a lot. And I have a
Mm,
lot of friends too that they start off as acting, but they wear all hats, and it's because they enjoy filmmaking, they enjoy the process, they enjoy telling stories at the end of the day. And
mm,
I believe, the best actors too, directors say this all the time, are the ones that understand how a story is constructed, how it's executed, right? It's not just they show up for the lines and they repeat them and then they go home, right? They actually are involved in the
exactly.
process, like Leonardo DiCaprio, right? The reason why Scorsese loves working with him is because even Alejandro Inarritu, he says he's amazing at, he's always asking questions, he's always saying, can we
Uh,
set it up like this, and like throwing in ad lib remarks, because they understand the story, they understand what the audience wants out of a scene, or what drives a character, what motivates them, and that's what gives the person adversity, right? I mean,
I
adversity,
agree.
that, right? Yeah, like able to handle different things on set.
I think it's very important that you know artists of today are able to have a general knowledge of all different positions because I think that gives you a bit of awareness and more of an understanding of like, okay, I think as if you're an actor and you understand how the director thinks, then you're gonna that's gonna tailor to your how you work.
Yeah.
Maybe you know what I mean. You understand how you're playing to the camera, how the camera's capturing you. So I think it's like pretty important. So
Yeah, it's all a cycle, really. Everything's interconnected, I believe. It's not like you can do one thing and it's independent from everything else. The way a film set works, as you should know, right, is you can't be doing anything, you can't abandon your other colleagues, you have to work alongside each other. And the movies that we see that are done poorly, is it because they're pulled apart or they're revisited.
mhm.
Something I'll be discussing with you later is the DC universe, right? We've seen that with Justice League, the last Justice League, right? That's exactly what happened, is that there's too many moving parts, there's too many people coming in and out, and there's not one kind of vision, like unison.
Mm,
And the reason why we have this remake, right, or I should say a re-edit, is because of how poorly it done. But you could differ on that, because I know you're a huge DC fan, and I love to hear your thoughts. But what do you find is more challenging? Like, do you find social media is very challenging as creatives, or do you feel it's benefiting us in your experience?
that's the thing. I mean, it's to me, it's like the yin and the yang. So as much as I say, like there's some difficulty of perhaps being an artist, I think it's been pretty helpful at the same time as an artist because now it's like you have um, people are getting access to you that you necessarily wouldn't have had access to
Hmm.
in the generation before us. So the great thing is that I think that you kind of have a freedom of creativity, on social media,
Yeah, of
which
course.
is great. So I always tell people, okay, take a musicians today, artists of musicians today, right? So um, one rapper, what's his name? I think Tyler the Creator.
Okay.
I was reading his bio the other day, and I always tell people about this guy because he originally, when he started, like, he wasn't catering. He was interested in catering to what was kind of popular per se.
Hmm.
He's very much interested in creating music that he liked, and his people who were creating with him at the time liked.
Right.
And from that, he grew his own fan base. Now, I think that's pretty cool because, like I said, long gone are the days where you had to cater to certain groups and all that. Like, that's still very much a thing to a
Hmm.
degree,
Right.
but there's now room for other stuff to come in and to have a life, if that makes sense. And I think that's where social media comes into play here today.
Well, creating a niche market, and that following, and then you can grow from there, kind of thing, right? Like when Joe Rogan started, it was mostly for like people in comedy, or just, I guess, for men. It was very, testosterone driven. He was always talking about MMA and UFC and all that stuff. And then he was explaining that he would branch off into explaining about conspiracies, and we talk about politics, and we talk about relationship dynamics and the importance of keeping fit. And again, now it's the number one podcast in the world for a reason, is because it grew to mainstream, right? It started
Mm,
off very niche, and then now it's mainstream. And back to your point, is that that's how kind of we have to look at it. I always tell my friends and colleagues, people in the industry, is what I'm doing right now, it may be small, but this is the steps into building, a bigger audience, right? You have to start really
mm,
small. You have to kind of create a following, and just inch by inch by inch, and just let people know what you're all about. Another example I would give is, Gary Vee's interesting character, but he says a lot of points that hit hard, and he always says the market will decide, right?
mm,
There's
very
no
true.
judgment, no matter what color you are, no matter what religion you practice. The market will decide. The market doesn't give like an F. And he says, you know what I mean? Like, he was yelling once, and he went on a rant, and he's like, they don't care if you're an alien, a fucking a tree. The market, if you're good, the market likes you. And it's like, yeah, you know what? It makes sense. Like, you see it all the time, like the content that gets likes or goes viral, right?
Hmm.
It's
Yeah, some of it's interesting.
yeah,
Some of it's interesting.
yeah, for sure, right?
Yeah.
Are you on TikTok by any chance? Are you making a
I
presence?
have like a small account, but it's not something I use
Not as
like
much,
that. No, no. I think I posted maybe a couple times, but that's
Well,
about
and then
it.
you just took it down because you realized you have to do too much twerking or
Oh, it's a
something.
lot of work. Honestly, I think as a content creator on
Yeah.
YouTube or TikTok or any of those platforms,
Hmm.
it's a lot of work. It's a
No,
lot of work.
100%.
You know.
Um, I struggled a lot with kind of adapting to, like you said, like YouTube and TikTok for a while, because I was trying to
Mm,
figure out how can I. The important thing is to keep consistent, or find a way to,
right.
right. And that's
Right.
why we all stop and say, "Oh, I'm done with posting," is because there's only so many ideas you have, or
Mm,
it's also a different. It's also an awkward platform, right? Like, as storytellers, how do you get a message across, especially us that like to tell deep stories, like in a minute, you know what I mean, or something captivating. So that's why I started these vlogs, right? And these corner talks, whether it's the podcast or just discussing things that can help people, whether it's in the film business, mental health. Um, so I guess it's just finding different avenues to
mm,
stay creative. Because people think, the reason why I say this is because people think with TikTok you need to do dance videos and you need to do all these comedy sketches, but in reality you could just really post anything as long as it has some meaning or is entertaining at the very least, right?
I think
So
I was gonna say though, I honestly think, I don't know if it's the actual creation that's the hard part per se, but it's more so just being able to stay relevant, and that's the hard thing because it's like, let's say, okay, let's say I made a video today, and it's just a silly video of me drinking water, and I spill the water on me.
right,
Like, it's short, it could be funny,
right.
but the unfortunate thing is that, well, there's two other people who have maybe similar videos who go the extra step that I didn't go,
Hmm.
and now that's popular, and now it's almost like you're trying to find a way to outdo other people, right? But I think the most important thing is that if you are a content creator, you're doing your best to kind of follow your own path. That's really, you
Well,
can
that's
only
why.
win.
Well, I get what you're saying. That's why for me, the whole creation part's for me. It's more difficult because I couldn't care less. Like with the whole relevance thing, it goes back to the niche market, and it goes back to if the
Mhm.
market likes you, they like you, right? Like obviously, you don't want to post things that don't pertain to your brand, but at the end
Right.
of the day, it's like you said, you're drinking a glass of water, and you're right. There's so many people. There's so many people for me that they're doing videos,
Mm.
more stylized editing. I'm talking about mental health and whatever, but I still get a following. I still get likes because it speaking to someone. And I think that's what it is that a lot of creators struggle with that because we're just so overexposed to all these creators and these social media platforms.
Mhm.
We feel, what I mean, intimidated. I know, speaking from my experience, I felt like that for the longest time. But then I tell myself the only way I'm gonna make some progress is if I just put myself out there, and then I learn, I figure out where I went wrong, and then I fix it, and then I go back, and then I fix it again. And it's all about adjusting and adapting, right? Like for example with TikTok, right? You might say, oh, I tried it a few times and it's not for me, and then in a year you get some inspiration and you do like
Mm.
selfie videos where you're just basically like pumping everybody up, like stop sleeping in, wake up. Because I see them all the time, they're literally yelling at the camera, but but you know what I mean, but they're so charismatic.
Yeah.
And like I said, I could see you doing something like, not obviously yelling, you're not that kind of guy, but you might find some point in your life, because we're always changing, right? And we always go through
Mm.
experiences. And I guess that's why I started my whole motivational videos is I would watch them on YouTube and say, you know what, like I love this. Like I would actually sit and listen to people talking about what their routine is like, and
Mm.
how they overcame a creative obstacle, and just anything to help people, right? So you just got to find your niche, your avenue, and just kind of create a market or some sort of audience, like you said, with Tyler the Creator.
Yeah.
But yeah, it always stems back to whatever works for you. My whole thing is don't do something that you're not comfortable with, or you're doing just for the sake of being viral or being popular, right? Like when
Agreed.
TikTok first came out, I'm like, oh my god, I got to do I got to do a dance video? Like I don't know how to dance. And then I realized no, like there's yeah. I'm gonna be honest. When it first came out, especially when the pandemic started, like that's all I would see,
Mm.
because they send you, it's part of the algorithm, right? And then as time passed, I realized, wow, there's people talking about their lives or their business, and especially with filmmaking, they do all kinds of edits. So I guess as long as you're alive, you'll always be relevant. That's my attitude.
Yeah,
You know what I
yeah,
mean?
I agree with that. I think that's a good
Yeah,
point. I was going to ask you. I know it's just early in our conversation,
for
but I'm
sure,
going
for
to ask
sure.
you, what was it about Tarantino that really drew you to him? You know, he's
Yeah.
he's such a left field director out
Mhm.
of all the I guess the popular ones we would have been exposed to growing up. So
Of course.
why him?
So yeah, growing up, I'm glad you asked that. Thanks, man. So growing up, I always been a fan of Spielberg, like Scorsese kind of thing. Maybe Scorsese later on, but pretty much those directors, the common ones, like I guess Robert Zemeckis, like
Mm.
watching Forrest Gump and Back to the Future. Like I was never really introduced to Pulp Fiction or those kinds of movies. There are only 10 movies and they're his movies, right? It's not like he branched off and did a whole bunch of other ones. So I guess what I'm saying is when I started gravitating more to him when I began getting really serious about how do I pursue a career in film, or how do I
Mm.
make this passion come to life, this dream of mine. And I remember I was 17, 18, and I sat down to write my like first feature length screenplay. And I was telling a buddy on the last podcast, they're like passion projects because what I'm doing is I'm developing my craft. And then I don't have any interest in selling them yet, or like kind of, you know, passing them along, because I'm trying to see if I can get to a point where I can make it myself, like direct them, and you know what I mean, with the experience behind the camera. But when I started writing the script and I started, going through dialogue, I never understood what all those dynamics meant.
Mm.
And when I was listening to how people would review like Tarantino films, and I was watching his movies, I started to like fall in love with this whole idea that, again, like you said, he's so different that I studied marketing for a reason. I love the idea that it's branded. Like you watch it and it's like you could tell it's his movie. And other directors are successful with this too, David Fincher and Scorsese. But like you said, he has this niche where it's like the characters belong to him, and everything's in a universe, and
Hmm.
there's a certain style, like a ring to the dialogue, and how there's always a revenge tale. You know what I mean? Like there's always like an undertone of revenge or violence. And I'm not saying my movies I plan them to be always about revenge or violence. It's just the idea. I really was infatuated with this whole idea of dialogue and the way characters speak and how it flows,
Hmm.
and how the script was constructed. And you would probably agree with me on this too, is that the most important thing in filmmaking people need to understand is the story. And the story is
Yeah.
the most important thing. And that's why I was drawn to him, is that he's a storyteller first. He always says that I'm a writer first and then a director.
Mm.
And I never really understood that, right? Because I always saw directors, they pick up a script and they direct it. But I like the idea that he creates these stories from his imagination. So with Tarantino, he was an inspiration for that. He was His story of how he became a filmmaker is inspiring, and I can, see myself following the same path. I'm not saying I don't know if I'll get to his level, but the idea that he didn't go to film school, because I was rejected from film school, the idea that he made it on his own merit, he made it on his own imagination, again, inspires me. And it tells me, like, there's a possible way. Now he's a one in a billion, right? But there's other filmmakers too that haven't gone to film school, or haven't, really taken any sort of training, but their passion is so great, they overcome those obstacles. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like he has a quote where he has two quotes that always, stay with me. One is, I didn't go to films, I went to film school. I mean, sorry, I didn't go to film school, I went to films. And the other quote was, um, if you're truly passionate about if you're truly passionate about cinema, you can't help but make a good movie or a good story. And they're very simple. They're very simple
I
quotes,
like that one.
but
I like that one.
what? Yeah, they're very simple quotes, something like that, on along those lines. But yeah, I like that he's ballsy. He gets to do whatever he wants. I'm not saying, again, very lucky, right? I guess he was in a situation where Weinstein at the time, when before he was convicted, gave him that power.
Mm.
Um, but I like that he's like a true artist, like a true storyteller. And that's how I see myself, as is keeping it authentic as possible, and not, straying from the script. As much as it's good to, again, I'm a big supporter of collaboration, and, adhering to changing things and tweaking things here and there. But when it comes to, like, the point where you got like a Suicide Squad, we got poor David Ayer, is that the director?
David Ayer, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
David Ayer. Yeah.
the whole movie was, completely stripped apart, to the point where he had to voice like how much he hated the studio system. And to get to that point, it's like, how bad how involved did they get, that his vision is not even is compromised, right?
Mm.
And again, this goes back to Zack Snyder, why he's making the re-edit, right? There's a petition for that, because people want to see what the person's vision was.
Well, it's interesting. I think, I mean, the interesting thing with superhero movies is that there's a lot of source material, a lot of source material.
Hmm.
So, we've a lot of fans have already been exposed to certain things. This is what we're expecting, and so I think sometimes with the studios, they kind of have this sheet of like, okay, this is what works. This is what doesn't work. And they're going with that. But when you have an artist like Zack Snyder who comes in, who's very much like, he wants to. I mean, he has his vision. He's a visionary director. I very
Hmm.
much think that. So he comes in and he has his ideas, and he's using the source material, but he's also expanding on the source material. But the unfortunate thing is that I think not everyone's gonna like his taste.
Yeah,
So
that's fair. That's the
uh,
problem, right? Like you just said it there, and which will lead us to, the whole DC Comics there. But they there's so much source material that you're battling your ideas. You're battling, the
mm,
fans. And this is why with Star Wars, I'm still a fan of Star Wars. I love the story at its core.
right.
But and I can't really forgive what happened with the whole sequel trilogy, because I really thought it was going to go in a certain direction. And again, it's not because I'm a it's not because I'm a nerdy guy. Like, oh, Luke Skywalker was treated poorly. Like, it's more about, like, where's the story? Like, if you really rewatch Episode 8, like, nothing happened. There's no arc, there's no consequence. I don't know. For me, it
Mhm.
just, yeah, it didn't really sit with me well. But
Yeah, my big.
mhm,
I mean, I don't get too deep into it, but my biggest beef with like the recent series of Star Wars is just they brought in Finn and just not did not utilize him. And to me, it's like they set up so much in the Force Awakens,
mhm,
and then the new director came in,
mhm.
right, and
Ryan
then
Johnson.
just yeah, it just whoa.
Well,
And
Finn,
then the last one that came
yeah,
out, it just yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah. No, I was just gonna say, like with Finn, for me, this is what I mean by nothing happens. Like things need to happen in movies, like to leave a mark, like something with the audience. Like I'll give an example. The end of the movie, near the end, he's about to sacrifice himself for the resistance, right? I don't know how he's gonna like blow up that weapon or something like that, like crash his ship into it.
Hmm.
And I was like, this is a badass scene. Like if he dies right now, this is gonna be a memorable scene. Like people are gonna remember this character. You know, it's just like it's just powerful. It was like really emotional if you rewatch it, up until the point when Rose interferes. And I'm saying like, did we need that? Like that was his moment. You know,
Hmm.
it's kind of like with Han Solo, like in Episode 5. He um he does a famous line where she goes, "I love you," and he's like, "I know." And then he's in what was it called? I don't even know the word. Anyway, they freeze him. But imagine if like Luke Skywalker jumped in and said no, and he started like defending him, and he didn't end up going. Like it just ruined. It
Mm.
would ruin the stakes, like the weight, the emotional weight of the scene.
Yeah, I don't. Now that you bring that up, I don't know if there's any moment, if there were any moments in this recent series of just like, oh, like all fans will remember this, or this is the most powerful scene in each. I don't think that we've really had that in this recent series
The
that I
only
could
thing,
think of at least.
the only one that I enjoy, I have to say, but it's because I was like, oh my god, this is gonna be sick if something happens in the next one. The ending of The Force Awakens, that scene where she hands him the lightsaber. I don't
Mm.
know, like my heart was just like, yeah, this is a sick way to end the movie. I originally
Yeah,
thought Luke was gonna like, in the scene where Finn was battling Kylo Ren in the snow,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
then
yeah.
he lost, he got his back like sliced. Um, I thought when the lightsaber went flying, whatever, it would, or he pulled it out of the snow, it would be Luke Skywalker using the Force, whatever. But it would be a little bit
Oh,
too like cheesy, like kind of the ending, like oh he showed up
that'd be
now.
crazy though.
It would be crazy, but it's
Crazy.
I feel like it would have thrown off. Like there's a reason why they didn't do it, because it would
Mm.
throw off the whole like character. Like this is their movie, not about the older characters. But that ending scene where she like gives him the lightsaber and he like has a sigh of relief, like I still watch that scene and I say to myself, I can't believe the next two movies. Like, what happened? Like, there's just like, again, I don't mind where they took the character Luke. It's just nothing could have happened. Like, rating couldn't have gone to the dark side. Not for the sake of
Mm.
going to the dark side. If you watch the movie, she's tempted. She feels abandoned by all the good side. The only
Right.
person that is comforting her the whole movie is Kylo Ren from the dark side. She has sexual tension with him. You know what I mean? Like, there's some sort of affection. I don't know why it couldn't work. And then the third one would have been about them trying to get her back. Like it should have been really dark, man. Like she goes to the dark side. Finn like sacrifices himself, and then the next movie would be like the last remaining resistance left, trying to you know defeat the First Order
Mm.
and hoping to also bring her to the light side if that's possible. You know what I mean? You didn't need like Darth Sidious and all that stuff. I don't know. That's my opinion, but that goes back to storytelling. Like when we have a powerful story, you don't need all these throwbacks and nostalgic moments. You know,
Story will speak for itself.
story will speak for itself, man. Like
Just like the market will determine everything. So
yeah, and that's what I wanted to ask you. So I'm glad you brought up all these different these things we love these these franchises, because I gotta know, this is something I've been asking for, been wanting to know for a while.
right.
So why is DC Comics your thing?
Oh man.
I've never seen a Marvel post, so I got to know why DC is your thing.
You know what? They just honestly they have I think I was exposed mainly to DC for the most part. I mean, I think a lot of people enjoy like the X-Men cartoons as kids, but man, DC, Batman, Superman, Green Lantern, like all these characters, they just have some really interesting stories. Very interesting stories. I think they're very complex. You take someone like Superman, he could have very easily been just like, hey, uh, good Boy Scout, that's it.
Okay.
But some of his I think some of his like stories, well, better stories are where he's really dealing with like just the human aspect, human things that make
Right.
sense. And that relationship with him and Lois, him and his like never knowing, still feeling very distant at home because he's an alien,
Hmm.
right? So
Of course, yeah. People
very,
forget he's an alien. That's funny because I was one of those where I'm like that because they kept. I think it was Man of Steel. They kept referring to him as an alien,
mhm.
like and I'm like, oh, that's right, he is. Because you get so caught up in like he's a farm boy, he's with a small family, and you forget like he looks human, but he's not. He's from another planet, you know.
Yeah, but very, I think very relatable to what's happening today. So I would love for DC to like get more into that, but I think a lot of people are kind of just like I said, there's so much source material out there. So I think a lot of us are wanting like something very true to the comics for the most part,
Well, yeah.
but
Also, a lot of black representation in like films. Like I'm enjoying Miles Morales. Like I want to see a movie, like a feature film, live
mm,
action, instead of the Spider Verse was beautiful, like top notch style and everything. But now they got to make like a live action one. Green Lantern, right? They had the Ryan Reynolds. Now it's time to bring on Amika.
right. But what's funny though? What's funny though, man? Like the Green Lantern is interesting because when the cartoon had been out in the early 2000s, like
Mhm.
the Green Lantern they had was John Stewart. So he was, the Marine from Detroit,
Right.
and he was part of the representation.
Hmm.
But then when they announced they were going to do a Green Lantern film and they were going to go with Hal Jordan, it was kind of just like a
Slap in the
slap in
face.
fans' face.
Yeah.
Because listen, there were fans who grew up watching that animation show who had no idea about who Hal Jordan was.
That was me. No, I'm,
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
saying, no, I'm saying, I'm raising my hand back to what you were saying, a slap in the face. When I heard the news, I was like, wait, isn't Green Lantern like how I remember Green Lantern? It was from the cartoon, and I enjoyed
Mhm.
that. I liked that he was, black male, like representing that and the backstory. So when I heard Ryan Reynolds, I'm like, what? And I knew it was going to be trash from the beginning, and
Mhm.
it's only because I felt there was just something superficial about it. Like it wasn't. It was just designed to be marketable. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I didn't feel it. Like the trailer. Like I didn't feel like that was the character. At the time, I thought, was it Idris Elba? Was he big at the time? I swear I
No,
said I was
he
suggesting.
was. That came out in 2011. He was decently. I mean, he did The Wire, right? So he was very known for The Wire.
Right, right, The Wire, right? And I remember
Yeah.
people were talking. I was one of those guys that's like, they should cast him. I'm even rooting for him to be the next James Bond. I've heard rumors
Mm.
about Tom Hardy, but mm, Tom Hardy's even more rough around the edges than Daniel Craig, and he needs, you know what I mean? Like he needs to have that
Yeah, they saw
polished.
some class. Yeah.
Yeah, like Tom Hardy's good, but he's just very yeah. He seemed yeah, he doesn't have that polished. He can't pull it off. Daniel Craig was a nice balance. And the reason why people were freaking out when he got cast in Casino Royale is they thought he was just a little bit too rough, but he proved that there's nothing wrong with that. So I'm just thinking of like the James Bond movie, like the fact that it keeps getting pushed. Are you a big fan? Are you disappointed that you
Of
can't
James
watch it?
Bond.
Yeah, that it's not being you can't stream it.
Uh, you know what, man? I'll be very honest with you. I haven't really been the biggest fans of the recent ones. The
Oh,
recent
okay. Well, yeah.
Bond installments. But definitely, I'll definitely check it out. But um,
Skyfall. I want to
uh,
interject on that. No, it's Skyfall because you said the last recent ones. You're right about that. Spectre wasn't too bad. Quantum of Solace, I actually enjoyed a little bit more. It was like more of a popcorn flick for me. But
mm,
Skyfall, yeah, it was like wow, like this is like way too serious for James Bond. Like it was just got really dark. It had like the Dark Knight vibes, like psychotic villain, like wanting to get captured. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And then Casino Royale was like beautiful. Like, yeah, you watch that movie and you're like, I want to be a spy. You know, I want to like travel the world and do whatever I have to do.
But you know what's great about that first one is that it has like touches of like the original, but it is still somewhat modern for the most part. And
Yeah.
that's the beautiful thing. I really think, in order for these characters to continue, they need to have, certain elements of its origin, but still uh, be allowed for room to have space to evolve. If you're not allowing it to evolve to some degree, then you know they won't necessarily continue with time.
Hmm.
So
No, it's true, man. You have to always have a longevity. I always, even when we do our projects, I'm always like, there has to be that rewatchability, right? You have to make it as if someone's going to rewatch it again. You know how like when you watch those movies, like the David Fincher movie, you rewatch it and you're
mhm,
like, wow, like there's even more stuff you pull from it, or it's more captivating because
mhm,
a character might say something, or you notice subtle things in them. Like I love that, the rewatchability aspect, because that's how movies are intended to be, right? They're supposed to stand the test of time, as Tarantino says
yeah.
for a film like Django Unchained. He was saying his acceptance speech, and he was like, I want to thank the actors for making my characters come to life, because you made me feel confident they're going to last another 50, maybe 100 years. Because he
Mhm,
knows that, right? It's like you were saying, it's just it's imperative that the story and the characters resonate with the audience, or at least leave a mark, because they'll remember him
exactly.
forever, right? And not the wrong
Exactly.
way. Like Ryan Reynolds, I like what he's doing. He's owning up to it with the whole Green Lantern, and he makes fun of it, trashes it, and that's the only reason why we remember the character. But if he
Mhm,
just stopped making movies or did rom-coms after that, it'd be like, yeah, no one's thinking about that. Like kind of like Eric Bana's Hulk, right?
mhm.
Everyone's thinking now about Mark Ruffalo as Hulk, right? Like that's kind of how they connect it. Look at Robert Downey Jr. with Iron Man. Even if they remake it and they do a different character, like he has to be as good, if not better, because I don't know who could take that role. You know what I mean?
Well, it's hard. It's hard. I mean, listen, when an artist has come in and that has made an imprint on characters that we read about, it's hard for us to see any other. And I think the next person comes in to fill that shoe will have big shoes to fill. I think it'll be very hard. I think they're better off just not casting anyone for like
But that's
10, 15 years.
I'm glad you said that.
Um,
My advice is for the studios, for the industry to meet the artist halfway, and not remake it in 2 years. Like wait, like give it a nice 10. I would say even 20, because the MCU is so vast. There's all these characters they want to do, and the lineup. My favorite is What If, because I thought that was kind of funny. Like, what if this didn't happen? And it's like
mm,
you're just building off content off of that. But it's a joke me and another friend make tease about, because we feel the MCU served its time. They did amazing with Endgame.
mm,
Like that was like kind of the end. And we're still gonna watch the content. I still do WandaVision and the Falcon, but I don't know where it's kind of headed. I don't know what they could do with it. But
yeah, I think this is it in their phase three? Is it phase four? Phase three?
mhm.
Anyways,
phase four. We're in phase four now.
okay, phase four. Thank you. So I'm really curious to see what kind of interest is going to be there for fans in the shows and the new movies, because for now, as far as I'm concerned, a lot of the main core cast that were there phase one necessarily won't be around very much. Like we've lost quite a few of them
Yeah,
due
the
to
only people I can think of is Thor, because the Guardians of the Galaxy, they're considered phase two. They're not even phase one, right?
yeah.
Yeah, so because they're doing a third one, that's not until like 2022, 23. And then the Thor 4, I'm pretty excited for, I'll be honest, because Taika Waititi's returning. And he's joining the
Yeah,
Guardians of the
they also
Galaxy.
touched that too, so that'll be interesting.
Yeah, no, because he's joining the Guardians of the Galaxy, right? They like their chemistry. So
Yeah.
those ones I don't mind. It's like, okay, let's see what happens. But again, other than that, like it's all fun now, but where is it gonna lead, Is there a bigger villain that I'm not aware of than Thanos, or is there someone?
Was it Galactus? Is that
Oh,
the
Galactus, right.
yeah, yeah.
Galactus, yeah.
So
But before I go though, are you happy with DC Comics? like the movies that are coming out, like Wonder Woman 84, like, because I know you're a diehard fan, man. So I want to know. You can honest
I'll
opinion,
be
man.
I'll be very honest.
Yeah.
I did watch Wonder Woman 1984 or 84, I guess,
Mhm.
and yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to say. I was speechless. To be honest with you.
You're speechless, yeah.
Just because I don't know if you've ever seen a movie. You saw the first one. You're like
Mhm.
almost like Star Wars in a bit, sort of. But like you watch the first one. You're like, yes, oh, this is amazing. Can't wait to see the next
Everything
installment.
was clicking, yeah.
And then everything that made the first one great was kind of like ripped away,
Mhm.
and there were other elements in there. I just yeah, it was a hard watch. It was a hard
Yeah.
watch.
Well,
Um,
yeah, I didn't even bother.
and I
Like,
don't know I don't know if that's because there was a lot of studio involvement in that, or is
meddling,
it
yeah.
yeah,
Well,
so
I was listening to these reviewers, Red Letter Media, and they were saying that they believe the reason why it did poorly is because Patty Jenkins, she directed the first one, right? But she didn't write it. There was another writer or a couple writers. But with this one, she wrote it and directed it because she felt confident she could tell the story.
hmm,
So I'm saying is that that's a bit believable, not for Patty Jenkins. I don't know her talent, but I know for a fact that when directors sometimes will want to write and maybe they don't have experience, again, back what we were saying about um, how they're two different fields. You can have like an idea of how story is constructed and written, but actually execution is a completely different animal, right?
right.
Even George Lucas, right? Like if you look at the original trilogy, that's all his story. No, right? Let's. I always say, let's be honest here, right? They, you know, it's a very different story, very different dialogue than the prequels. You know what I mean? Because he
Yeah,
chose to write them, right?
isn't that so interesting? The first one, New Hope, like to me, that's like it's amazing. And then, I mean, I think I imagine because I mean, I wasn't old enough, but I imagine
Right.
fans in early 2000 when they heard like George Lucas was coming back to
Oh, there's a whole
direct.
documentary on it. People versus George Lucas. It's crazy.
People were excited, like
Yeah.
yes. And then
I think episode one is considered still the most anticipated movie in history because the trailer, and this is before YouTube, the trailer was downloaded so many times. People would take off work to watch the movie or stand outside in line. Like it was crazy. And then the movie was released and they're like, what the hell? But leading up to it, they honestly were like going, like, they were going to tell the backstory, like how Anakin and Obi-Wan met, right? And one guy was like describing it like God's going to have to come up with something better because it's about to be the end of the world or something. Like, you know what I mean? Like this guy was freaking out. But you can relate to that. You're like, imagine if we had a trilogy close to our hearts
mm,
that was like, wow, like, you know, they're gonna do the backs because they hinted at certain things throughout, like
right,
world
right,
building,
right.
but then it's like the creator comes back 20 years later. Like I'm trying to think of a trilogy or something that we would be that excited like to see the backstory, and then like
Mm,
it's just not, you know, like the Matrix. Imagine if the Matrix they did like a prequel trilogy. I don't think it would be as interesting, but just to see like how everything like collapsed. I don't know.
mm.
It just wouldn't.
That would be interesting.
It would be interesting, but I'm saying imagine it not being executed the right way. I know a lot of fans aren't too happy with the second and third. Um, I'm looking forward to the
Well,
fourth. I'm curious what it's all about. I hope it
that
still has the edge like that.
that's coming out this year, right?
Is it? Wow, that'd be sick. I thought they were filming this year.
I'm not too sure if it's this
I
filming
can
this
double
year or it's
check.
coming out this year. So
I'll just do a quick double check.
yeah, do a double check.
All right. Yeah, 2021. You're right.
Yeah.
December
So
23rd. But you know what I mean by the edge is because the first two were made in like the late 90s, early 2000s. So it's like a certain style to it. So I'm afraid it's going to be too much of a gap.
mm,
You know what I mean? Like I don't know. It's There's a feel to movies, man. Like kind of like the original Star Wars. There's a grit to it. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like a humanity
yeah.
because it was made in the 70s and 80s, right? As opposed to with the prequels. And it's funny because if you watch them in order, it's like, wait, why are we going back and forward in time? Because the sequel trilogy, right? It's like the most polished looking one compared to
Mm,
the stories before it. They got to make a like an old Republic, like ancient times, like Star Wars before the prequels. Yeah,
before.
yeah. Like no, because there's a rich history, like lore, and
Oh yeah.
people that aren't fans are like, who cares? But yeah, I love to see that because people, that are a fan of Star Wars, I don't know if they know this, but the Sith at one time were more powerful than the Jedi. They actually were dominant. Like they
Mm,
had more members, and they, would kind of ravage planets, and um, they were forced to be reckoned with. Which why the rule of two came about, because
mm,
they abused that power and they ended up killing each other off. And then the Jedi naturally took over.
right.
But if it wasn't for that abuse of power, they'd still be the dominant figure. But that's why the rule of two exists with, Palpatine, and you got Plagueis the Wise. Is it the Whites or the Wise? Another check.
Oh, the two.
I'm the worst Star Wars fan. People are like, if they're fans, they're like, what the?
Too funny.
Wow, I might have. Oh yeah, Plagueis the Wise. Yeah. Thanks, internet. Yeah, so that's great, man. I'm glad. You're doing well, and you're still staying creative as much as you can during these crazy times. I guess some days are better than others, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think
You know what I
I
mean?
think right now the most important thing is just keeping your creative juices flowing, whether that
Yeah,
be writing something, shooting something,
yeah,
you know. So
that's great, man. Well, I had a really good time, and thanks again for joining the podcast. Plan to do more of these with you.
hey,
Yeah,
anytime, and I appreciate you having me on here. Really,
yeah,
it's amazing seeing you like trying something new. So
yeah. Thank you, man. I'm trying to build. I want people to know who we are, what we're all about. If they have any questions, concerns, they can contact us through our socials, and yeah, we'll go from there. Okay. Thanks for listening, everybody. Take care, man. Bye.